How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your September 2019 horoscope for Libra, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. To jump right into it, we're starting September off with Mars conjoining the Sun in Virgo. Now, listen up because we got a lot to talk about with this Virgo stuff for this month for you guys. Mars, of course, is the planet of our action, our drive, our intentions, what we're doing, and where our energy is being placed. Mars is a malefic planet, so it is bringing problems like frustrations and anger and fights as well. It heats things up, it severs, and it cuts. But while Mars is in Virgo, it's looking to pay attention more to detail and to work through the details a little bit more. The sign of Virgo is mutable, so it is a changeable sign. And so while Mars is looking through, Virgo details and facts, Mars is looking to change what it does with it. And so while Mars is conjoining the Sun on September 1st, this is kind of like purifying Mars's energy, putting Mars into the spotlight. And while this is in Virgo, I think that this is a big time to really look at where are you really executing your plans, or I should say, how are your actions starting to come more into a visible light that you can understand. And the reason I say that is because this is happening in your 12th house. Now, the 12th house rules repressed parts of yourself, unacknowledged parts of yourself, rules isolation, alienation, hidden enemies. It's a place where you can go and hide and be by yourself for healing. And while Mars conjoins the Sun right here, I think that this is going to be a big look at where do you need to start taking a little bit more action and start doing a little bit more, or putting a little bit more effort into bringing up the things that you sometimes repress and don't necessarily acknowledge and know that you could probably have put some attention to. Then on September 3rd, we have Mercury conjoining the Sun in Virgo, and this is just as important because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. It's Mercury's home sign where it can do as it pleases, and while Mercury's in that sign for the half of September, Mercury is able to function really well. So when it comes to communicating and it comes to, speaking our thoughts and where our mindset's at, things are concise, things are specific, things are clear, and they make sense. However, while Mercury is conjoining the Sun and going Cazimi, this is when Mercury is also, in essence, kind of getting purified by fire and seeing the light a little bit more. And the light bulb kind of goes off in Mercury's head a little bit more. But again, this is in your 12th house of repressed and unacknowledged parts of yourself. So the question really becomes, what are you starting to, what problems, because again, we have Mars here in Virgo, what problems or frustrations or what actions are you taking that, could be issue that you need to be a little bit more aware of? And with Mercury conjoining the Sun, it's kind of like becoming aware of what needs to get handled and what really needs to get addressed, because the 12th house is easy to repress, it's easy to not acknowledge, and it's easy to hide away from it. And I think while Mercury and Mars are conjoining the Sun, this is a good time to look at that area of your life for you guys. Then through September 4th, 7th, and 10th, that's when we're going to have Venus opposed Neptune, Mercury opposed Neptune, and the Sun opposed Neptune. And I grouped all of these up just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to, digest. But Venus is in her sign of fall right now in Virgo, and Venus is the planet of love, value, money, relationships, connecting, consoling. And while Venus is in the sign of Virgo, where this is about specifics, this is about details, Venus can want to, beautify and bring value to this area of being specific, taking measured notes, writing things out systematically. However, the problem is Venus with Virgo can get a little bit overwhelmed with the details and also kind of get so wrapped up in them that she can't make it as beautiful as she wants it to. And so while Venus is in your 12th house, again, of repressed, unacknowledged parts of yourself, where you're doing a little bit more introspective work, looking at the tinier details of yourself that you do value, that you don't bring up, Venus is opposing Neptune, and Neptune, again, is the planet of confusion, the planet of mysticism and duality. And while it's in Pisces, it's bringing this overwhelming fog and blur to things. So while Venus opposes Neptune, and Neptune's in your 6th house, this is about your routine, your habits, your health. I think Venus opposing Neptune is kind of understanding where you're starting to see more value and bringing more time to yourself and caring more for yourself, and not necessarily just pushing everything away, and being able to realize and take on and have the conversations you need about things that you could repress or not acknowledge. Well, then on September 7th, when Mercury opposes Neptune, when Venus opposes Neptune, this is kind of like seeing the value difference of kind of like, oh, I actually am enjoying this more, the process of taking care of myself a little bit more. Mercury opposing Neptune is understanding that a little bit better. It's kind of like, oh, it clicks now. I do like this, and if I do the things that I like and the things that I enjoy, regardless if it's uncomfortable, it's going to start to make more sense and things will start to become more clear. So as Mercury opposes Neptune, I think this is a time of really mental understanding of the difference between what is of, not necessarily just of what's value and what's not, but what needs to be cared for and, what necessarily, I don't want to say doesn't need to be cared for right now, but just knowing what needs to have your full attention and focus. But then on September 10th is when the Sun opposes Neptune. And this is kind of like the difference, with Venus, it's feeling that value. With Mercury, it's mentally understanding it. With the Sun opposing Neptune, it's kind of like seeing it and like it's full, like in a full exercise and, example. And as the Sun is in your 12th house right now, where you are dealing a little bit more with isolation, a little bit more of, being alienated, being a little bit more by yourself, during this time as it opposes Neptune, I think this is really looking at, during this time of being by yourself, what have you learned that needs to be, addressed, that needs to be focused on, that needs to be cleaned up and cleared out a little bit more. And then on September 13th, that is when Mercury is going to conjoin Venus in Virgo. So while Venus is in Virgo and, wanting to, fix what she can and value what she, wants to, kind of having a difficult time, but also making yourself stronger in what you value, Mercury is coming up to Venus and kind of like speaking that message out. And I feel like September 13th is really that time of like, hey, now that I've put in a little bit more work and some thought and dedication into, treating myself better, giving more attention to myself, and I bring that not in like the Venus and Leo way of like you get all of the attention, the spotlights on you, but in the sense of like what are your needs that you can repress and not acknowledge sometimes, and how is taking care of those, actually changing your outcomes and your behaviors. And as Mercury conjoins Venus, this is kind of like mentally kind of getting the picture of like, if I do these things, this is a healthy relationship for me, and how this will create a healthy relationship for me in everything that I do. Mercury conjoining Venus is kind of like getting the mental clarity of, the mental synergy of like, this is what's valuable and this is what works, rather than kind of like, I value this, but this is what works for me, and it can kind of, cross in between each other. It doesn't really work well together. Mercury conjoining Venus is kind of like, I see how taking one step at a time and laying out like a plan actually can benefit me. Also on September 13th is when we have the full moon in Pisces. And I'm glad I just said, kind of like laying out the plan, because this full moon's happening in your 6th house of your work, of your routine, of your habits, your behaviors, your health, your employment, like basically what you're doing every day. And a full moon brings up light. This is both the luminaries bring lit up so you could see both sides of the story. And while we've had the Sun in Virgo and it's been mostly focused on, little tiny specific details you've probably been repressing or forgetting or not acknowledging that are kind of being overwhelmingly brought up, this moon in Pisces is like, hey, you can change your habits and your behaviors and your routine the way that you choose to, in a way that best suits you. And as this full moon is happening, I think this is a really good time to be more open with what your schedule can look like and implement things that are more serving towards your health, that are more serving towards your mind, and that are more serving towards your needs. Then the next day on September 14th, as Mercury and Venus are still conjoining each other, they're both simultaneously going to be moving into Libra and moving into your 1st house. Now this is quite a dramatic energy shift, because now Venus is going from her sign of fall, where she doesn't work that well, to her sign of domicile, her home sign, where she can be as Venus as possible. And Venus is about connecting. Venus is about consoling. And, God, I keep forgetting the word I want to use for Venus, but whatever, we'll move on. Venus is wanting to, again, connect, attract, bring value to, enjoy, and indulge. And as she goes into Libra, it's kind of like Venus kind of has this authority and this power to finally do that. But the most important thing is that Venus is moving into your 1st house of you, of yourself, of your personality, of your physical body, of what you look like and how you react and respond. And as Venus goes through her home sign into your 1st house, she's your ruling planet, this is a really big time of kind of looking at how you can balance the, relationship with everything else that you have going on in your life with yourself. Where do you need to bring more value to who you are? Where do you need to be more expressive of the value that you have? And where do you need to find more balance within that? And I say balance as in the idea of like, you could put a lot of value onto what other people do, but are you matching that with yourself? Like, are you seeing yourself in that same light? And as Mercury goes into Libra too, this is going to be more expressive of this. This is going to be still very loud and clear. Mercury is still projecting this, message that Venus has. And as Mercury goes into Libra, this is, again, communicating with more diplomacy, communicating with more, spirit in it, with more, a little bit more, not necessarily just logic, but with value and being able to see each side. So while Mercury and Venus go into your first house, I think that this is just more of a time to really be reflective on who you are, but also enjoy who you are, rather than being, maybe more isolated and by yourself as you were when the sun was in, or when all those planets were in Virgo. Also, on September 14th is when we're going to have Mars oppose Neptune. Now, this is the kind of time of Mars doing all this work in Virgo, being, attention to detail, detail-focused. Mars opposing Neptune is kind of seeing the balance between, or seeing both sides of the story of like, hey, if I, this is what's important for me, and this is what I haven't been addressing, this is what I haven't been bringing up that I need to start focusing on, and these are the things that don't necessarily require my time and energy as much as I put into them. Then on September 18th, we finally have Saturn stationing direct. Now, as Saturn's been retrograde in your fourth house for quite some time, he was handing you a lot of responsibilities, restrictions, dilemmas, walls, problems within your home life, your family life, your parents, your roots, your heritage, even your roommates, where you're living. And as Saturn finally stations direct, also mind you, this is in Virgo season, we have Mars, the Sun, and then Venus and Mercury were trining Saturn, so there was a lot of constructive energy here. But Saturn stationing direct is like, okay, what lessons has this Saturn retrograde taught you? And figure that out, because it's time to start implementing those lessons and putting it into real life practice. Where are you going to take more responsibility? Where are you going to have more, not just authority, but discipline with where you set boundaries, where you set rules and regulations within how you live, what your home life is like, and what's going on with your family. Then on September 21st, we have Jupiter squaring Neptune exactly. Now, this transit has been happening for the majority of this year. However, this is the third and final square that Jupiter has to Neptune. And during this time, this Jupiter-Neptune square has been like, hey, here's all this exciting possibilities. Neptune's kind of like, yeah, but what's the truth? Jupiter retrograded, squared Neptune again, where it was kind of like, there's a black and a white picture here of what could be and what can be. And as Jupiter starts to square Neptune again, and it finalizes here in this month, this is kind of like the truth and the optimism prevailing over a cloud of illusion and fog and discomfort that can kind of, hold us still in our places while Jupiter wants to take us on this journey and expand what we're doing. Now, Jupiter is going through your third house right now, and so this has a lot to do with just being aware and having more opportunities and being more optimistic about what you have to offer to the table and what you have to bring to the table. How do you utilize yourself in the best ways, and how can you see that in a bigger picture? Then on September 23rd, we have the Sun moving into Libra, and if you're a Libra Sun, happy birthday, and if you're a Libra rising, well, you got the Sun in your first house. This is bringing light, this is bringing essence and life force and vitality into your personality, and so you'll definitely be feeling a lot more of yourself at this time. And then on September 25th is when we have Venus square Saturn. Now, I bring this up because this is usually a pretty hard transit, but I find this one interesting because both Venus and Saturn are in their domiciles, and Venus is in the superior position for this square. And while Venus is going through your first house, where you're looking, kind of, not to be corny, but it's more of like, where are you bringing yourself more self-love? Where are you bringing more value? Are people being more attracted to you? And is that, kind of hyping you up? Venus squaring Saturn is kind of like, there may be this dilemma or this block, or a good way to put it would mostly be dilemma, of where you're putting attention and value to yourself and how that's conflicting with what responsibilities or restrictions or authorities that you're dealing with your home and your family life. And I think this Venus square Saturn is really about balancing out, making sure that you're getting the, not just the attention, but the respect and the, justice that you deserve, but balancing that out with what problems or walls or barriers you could be facing in your home life. And it's kind of like, if you want to have a better relationship with someone in that way, like in that area, area, you've got to be the one to kind of like do the work first, in a sense. You know, you're not going to be able to have a healthy relationship with someone if you don't talk to them, or if, you know, you're yelling at them. It's about you, you know, starting the initiating it, and you starting to make that bridge. And I think that just has more to do with Venus being in Libra, and you kind of, you know, you guys are Libra risings, you know how to have social skills, you know how to work with people. And during this time, it's kind of like, now you have to really be the higher person here and look at how you can handle these situations. And then we end September with the new moon in Leo on September 28th. I mean, the new moon in Libra, not the Leo. And this is happening in your first house. So there's this opportunity here to really kind of level yourself out with your ideas of your personality, with how you react, respond, the way that you look and everything. This is just a really good time to level yourself out, get a clear head, and kind of like reset some intentions and kind of go, hey, this is who I am, this is how I'm feeling now, and I'm feeling good, and this is how I want to start doing things from here on out. And I think this new moon in Libra, although it will be squaring Saturn, there are some, you know, there's some stuff that you're going to have to, you know, face during this time. But I do think that this new moon in Libra is kind of giving you guys this ultimate outlook of, hey, you know, if I want to implement these healthier things and free up my time and also take on the things that I've been dealing with my home life, it's up to me to find the balance between that. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this and sharing, liking, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next month.